Welcome to Culinary Art 118. This is Chef Jack, and this is the first PowerPoint for Chapter 1, Week 2. So with these PowerPoints, I will go through the PowerPoint as I will on Monday morning, but this is just in case you miss that. This is an opportunity for you to watch these PowerPoint. This is just introducing the first, and this is our textbook. So sustainability, what is it? Take a minute to think about it. Actually, I won't give you a full minute, but we're starting to hear that word more and more. But really, what does it mean? Are you sustainable, or is there someone that you know that, oh yeah, they're sustainable, and it almost makes you feel guilty because you're throwing out can in the garbage and not in the recycle bin. So you got the ecological, economic, social. And when they all come together right in the center is you've got sustainable. And so looking at all the little different factors, and that's what we will do throughout this course, is how, environment, ecological, social component, and economic. So chapter 1, hopefully no one went there for their breakfast this morning. And a lot of times we think of fast food. It's quick, it's convenient, but what are some of the hidden costs? And actually, after you've eaten a Happy Meal or whatever meal it is, do you really feel good or not? That'll be a question I'll ask kind of throughout the semester too. Is when you eat something, you should feel good. Not dragged out, sluggy. Oh, you want to go to the bathroom, or you want to go take a nap for a couple hours. Then some of the learning objectives, explaining the food systems, public health, the overview of the food system, and discuss approaches to the food system change and provide examples. So think back to your most recent meal, and hopefully it wasn't one of those Happy Meals. How much did it cost? Where did all that money go to? When you gave the money to somebody, where did it go? Does that money stay in our community, or does it instantly go to some other state or country? Where did the food originate? So the flour or the meat or whatever it was, where was that food grown? How was it grown? Where was it processed? How healthy was it? Producing it infect the environment, the workers, the animals. Why did you choose it? Cost effective? Was it cheap? Was it convenient? Or was it something that you went to the farmer's market, bought something, cooked at home? And most of you are at this point, Chef, can I just eat, please? I don't want to think about it. Which is, a lot of times we don't think about it, but hopefully after this class, you will think about it a little bit more. So the food system, a lot of times we don't think of it as a system, but it is a system, and systems is a network of interacting components that form a complex whole. Like METC is a complex system. You've got registration, financial aid, building services, all the administration, the academic support, the computer labs, public safety. It all has individual parts, but together they work together as a team. And sometimes they don't work together as a team, especially when we're trying to register and get online. So the food system is interconnected with many parts, all the activities and resources needed to produce, process, distribute, and consume food. Certain drivers and outcomes of these processes. So the relationships defining a feature of a system, factors outside the system boundaries. And again, this is all coming straight from the book, but just in case you don't have the book, I'm also bringing this up. And it's a food system. It's not a chain. It's just not one long line. There's that food after you've used it or thrown it out way. Hopefully it can get back into it just doesn't go out into the space. It's in our system, and we've got to somehow reuse it. And here's what I'm talking about. Some of the systems, the feedback loops. We've got waste, trash. Does it just sit in a landfill, or is there a way that we can utilize and reduce the amount of trash? Because the landfill out in Menominee Falls there is filling up, and I think they thought it would fill up in 2030, but now they're saying by 2022 it's going to be full. So then where's going to be the next landfill? To grow food, you've got nutrients, water, seed, energy, and sunlight, chemicals, potentially, the know-how, labor. If anyone's had a garden, it's a lot of work. And I know at the club when I would take my chefs and cooks to the different farms that we used, they'd get back in the car and they're like, "Oh, that's a lot of work." But then you start to appreciate food and how it's grown, where it comes from, and you try to utilize every bit and piece of it. Social, how the workers that make produce all of our food, how are they being treated? Are they making a living wage? So all those things kind of factor in here, and throughout the class, this is some of the things that we will be talking about. Food system, properties, challenges. Lake Victoria, that was a little story in the book about how they introduced a perch to the lake because they thought, oh, we need some cheap protein that we can feed our public. But then all of a sudden, this fish took over the lake and basically destroyed the habitat of the lake, and now the lake is almost dead because these fish have destroyed the natural ecosystem. So sometimes we get a result that we're not looking for or anticipated. The book talked about our system, what makes a hamburger, how they're raised, pastured, feeds, the room for the animals, but then you need a lot of acreage to grow the feed for the animals. Then they send them to finishing facilities, slaughter, process, packaging, all the factors that can affect this process. In the book about the apples, now we have apples year round. There is no, if you go to any farmer's market in July, you're not going to find any local apples. But then in August, September, October, you're going to see more and more apples coming. By the time you hit March, really no more local apples. We go into a pick and save and there's apples all the time. Where did they come from? And then they talk a little bit about the industrial apple, how they're harvested, waxed, they're stored in facilities with low oxygen, which then they can really keep them for half a year. And some of these facilities are as big as the METC main building, and they're just full of apples. And then they just distribute them. So, I mean, if your apple has been stored for a year, is it really a fresh apple? I don't know. I don't. I don't think about that. Small scale apple production. Again, this class for your paper, you're going to have to go to a farmer's market and you'll see all the local apples. And sometimes they have a little blemishes and stuff on them, but they haven't been sprayed. Sometimes I think about it. If a bug doesn't want to eat an apple, do I want to eat that same apple? What's on that apple that's keeping the bugs away? So I don't mind a little blemishes on the apples because I know bugs are eating it. There actually might be a bug in there, but that's a whole other story. Public health. And this is something too, I think that as chefs, sometimes we're not thinking about, but what and how we serve people can directly affect their health. Maybe not that day, but over the course of time, years, decades, what we eat at home and out can really affect our health. Public health emphasizes primary prevention, looking to the root causes and stopping it before it. It's like preventing cancer. Let's try to prevent it because once you have cancer, that's a whole nother ball game. And if we can try to prevent some of this stuff before, get population base, how to address disparities. These are all things that public health looks at, considers social determinants, education, income, where they live, structural determinants, economic, political, and social, environmental, climate, work sites, health disparities, race, and gender. Overall, of our U.S. food system, primarily since World War II, become more industrial, producing higher yields at lower monetary costs. And it's all about efficiency. How can we efficiently produce this food? But something that we don't look at is, what's the quality of it? What's it? That apple that's a year old or half a year old, or most of the apples in grocery stores, how do they really taste? They're certainly hard, and that's because they can withstand the rigors of being shipped around the world. They've been kind of selected for that, but now really what does that apple taste like? Does it make you want to go back and eat another one versus a local one, which has more texture, more flavor, more. Some of the different subsystems, 51% of the land is used for agriculture, 16% of the energy, 80% of water. Annually produce 9 billion animals. And what's a CAFO? Maybe that's a good one to look up. Concentrated animal feeding operation. So they no longer call it a farm, it's a CAFO. They can raise hundreds of thousands or millions of birds, in one feeding production area. Some of the challenges, health concerns, and so some of the food that we eat is not necessarily the most nutritious, or like so much of the food we eat now has high fructose corn syrup in it. Normally the body takes a while to break down like whole grains and stuff, and it might be a matter of hours, whereas high fructose corn syrup is literally in your bloodstream in 8 to 10 minutes after you drink it. And then what happens when you drink that soda or whatever? You get a little buzz, and then all of a sudden an hour later you're like, I want to go to sleep. And then what's the next? So then what do you do? Drink another soda. So it's just kind of this vicious cycle. Food insecurity, antibiotic resistance. 80% of the antibiotics that are used in this country are actually for the animals. And now that resistance is carrying over into our lack of resistance to bacteria. Environmental challenges, future food security challenges, loss of small and mid-sized farms, aging of farmers, lack of food reserves. The current food system benefits, supplies are more plentiful and inexpensive than ever. Where are the ladies? I know there's got to be some lady farmers here, but they're not picturing any lady farmers. And actually, women empowerment, 50% of the agricultural labor force is women, 2/3 in developing country. They're woefully under-supported in financing credit. And this is a link to the video, but I also put the video in the blackboard in lesson 2. The science and practice of applying ecological principles to agriculture, develop practices that work with nature to mimic natural processes and serve ecological integrity. So some of the things that they talked about in the book was permaculture, no-till farming. And again, industrial farming just kind of tried to bend the earth, the farms, to our will, but now we're realizing that it's such a good thing. The book talked about wicked problems, when stakeholders cannot agree. Sometimes problems are just, they're problems, and sometimes there's not one best solution. It's, there's only better solutions and then there's strong ethical, moral, political, professional dimensions. So sometimes, the book talks about these, there's not one, but let's just get together and figure out what's best for all of us, or the most of us. Focus, health promoting, sustainable, resilient, diverse, fair, economically balanced, and transparent. And then some human right to adequate food, complement the principles of a healthy, sustainable food system. Every man, woman, and child, alone or in community with others, has physical and economic access at all times to adequate food or means for procurement. Beyond just hunger, to address food system goals, adequate food, appropriate nutrition, safe from contamination, accessible. So avoid judging, and I think this is critical in this class. Avoid judging others of their dietary choices, food insecurity, obesity, farming practices. We don't know what they actually do. And I think as we just, I always tell people, it's like, do stuff that makes you feel good. If you eat something, do something that makes you feel good, then stick with it. If it doesn't, think about what would be an option. Resilience, the book talks a little bit about resilience. When your boat rocks, you want resiliency, not efficiency. So when you do have a hurricane or a wildfire or something, can your system bounce back? Where most natural forests or wetlands can, but when we've had forests and wetlands that have been cleared or changed, they might be efficient, but they're not resilient. For resilience, ability to recover from turbulations. Again, it's just a different way of saying we want resilience to be able to, you want your boat to rock, you don't want it to tip over. And the more resilient it is, the more ability your system or boat is to the waves. So again, principles of the health food system, so social, economic, and ecological. That goes back to that drawing that we started with in the beginning, promoting health, sustainable. And again, this is a good term too, conserves, protects, regenerates, meets the nutritional needs of today without compromising the resources for the future. In 50 or 100 years, are they going to look back at us and say, wow, you guys really made it difficult for us. Diverse, fair to the farmers, workers, and eaters. economically balanced, transparent. So that's my PowerPoint for today, and hopefully so again, I just make these PowerPoints so that if you miss class, you'll have an opportunity to view these before you take the quiz. And that's it for now. Thank you.